So we're going to talk about function notation. All function notation is another way to write an equation. So we can see in this example y equals 2x plus 6, and in the next example f of x equals 2x plus 6. These are both saying the same thing but with different notation. So the second line here is read f of x equals 2x plus 6, and that's called function notation. It means the same thing as y equals 2x plus 6. So let's look at a video that's going to tell us a little bit about functions and how they work. So just keep in mind that functions are really just equations. So let's look at this video. So let's look at this equation here. It's written y equals 7.50 times x plus 1. That's the same equation that we saw with the function machine. Only with this equation, we're using variables we're used to seeing. So y is our output and x is our input. So when we put a value in for x, we can see what y is going to become. So let's look at our machine.
And input a few values to see what lunch might cost. Any value we input into the function machine is transformed by the mathematical operation or the rule of the function.
So the mathematical operation or rule of the function is the same thing as an equation. It's just an equation.
What if no friends come to lunch? The output is going to be $7.50 because you're still eating.
So in this case, 0 is our x value and our y value is $7.50.
What if 3 friends come to lunch? What if 5 friends come to lunch?
So in this case, 5 is our x value and $45 is our y value, where x's are our inputs and y's are our outputs. You can also notice that these are ordered pairs. So I have the ordered pair 0, 7.5, 3, and 30, 5, and 45. So now that we've talked a little bit about functions, let's see how to use them. So again, functions are just equations, but they have a slightly different notation. As we see in this example, f of x equals 2x plus 6. So here's the equation y equals 2x plus 6. Well, let's let x equal 4 and solve for y. You know how to do this. We're going to put 4 in the place of x. So y equals 2 times 4 instead of 2 times x plus 6. And we end up with 8 plus 6. So y is 14. So this tells us that when x is 4, y is 14, which gives us an ordered pair. Well, the notation f of 4, that's how you say that, f of 4 equals 2x plus 6 means the exact same thing as what we just did. It's just a shorthand way of saying let x equal 4 and solve for y. Only instead of solving for y, what we're solving for is f of 4. In other words, the value that this equation is when x is 4, or what the y value is when the x value is 4. So the notation looks like this. F of 4 equals 2 times 4 plus 6. So f of 4 equals 8 plus 6. So f of 4 equals 14. So f of 4 equaling 14 means that this equation equals 14 when x is 4, or the ordered pair 4, 14. So again, the notation f of 4 equaling 2x plus 6 is just shorthand. That means the words let x equal 4 and solve for y. So now we're going to try the next example. So here we have a function and we're going to solve for y when x is negative 5. So we're finding f of negative 5. So f of negative 5 is 2 times negative 5 plus 6. So that's negative 10 plus 6. So f of negative 5 equals negative 4. and our ordered pair is going to be -5 for our x value and -4 for our y value. Now notice as you look at numbers 2, 3, and 4 that you have an F, a G, and an H. Sometimes your function notation will use other letters besides F. For example, in number 3, you see G, and that would be read as G of -5 equals x minus 2. In number 4, you have H. That would be H of 7 equals -3x minus 5. It really doesn't mean anything different. It's just a way to label different equations, because when you get into higher math, you'll have embedded functions. So you may be finding G of F of H of -2, something like that. But don't worry about that for now. So that's why you have different letters. So go ahead and try each of these and then check back when you're done and see how you did. Take a minute to check these and pause so that you have time to do that. And then when you're ready, move on to the next slide. So now we have several directions. First, we're asked to solve the equation in terms of y. Once we do that, we're then going to write it using function notation. Once we have our function notation, we're going to solve for 3 ordered pairs using the x values 0, 1, and 2. So let's get started. First of all, you need to keep in mind that whenever you have an entire side of an equation being divided by a number, the easiest thing to do is to work with the inverse operation to get rid of that number. So what's the inverse operation of division? Multiplication, right? So we're going to multiply the entire side here by 3. And keep in mind that's the same as 3 over 1. So you can see that we can cross cancel these 3's to get 1. And then since we multiplied the left side by 3, we have to do the same on the right side, multiply that by 3 as well. So we end up with 2x plus y equals 3. Now we're going to solve for y in terms of x. So we're going to add -2x to both sides of our equation. Keep in mind there's an understood 0x beside your constant to help you see how to line up your like terms and add them. You don't have to write that step. You can just keep in mind it's there. It's up to you. So I'm going to put my terms in the correct order, having my x term first. So y equals -2x plus 3. I've solved for y in terms of x. Now I need to write this using function notation. So I'm going to get f of x equals -2x plus 3. Next, we're going to use the 3 x values, 0, 1, and 2, in order to use those as our 3 input to find our 3 outputs, or 3 y values, and that will give us our 3 ordered pairs. So go ahead and try that and then check back and see how you're doing. Take a minute to check your answers. Pause while you do so, and then when you're ready, replay the video, and let's do the next problem. You have the same instructions for this problem as the last. Solve in terms of y, right, using function notation, and then solve for your 3 ordered pairs given the 3 x values. So go ahead and put this in function notation and then check and see if you did that correctly before plugging in the 3 x values. So here's your equation with all the steps. Notice that in this case, I showed a different way to approach this problem, where I kept in mind that the left side of our equation being divided by 3 is the same as multiplying it by 1/3. That's another way to approach it, or you could have just multiplied both sides by 3. It's the same thing. You should have ended up with f of x equals 2/3 x plus 2. So now go ahead and plug in your 3 x values and check back and see if your answers are correct. So take a minute to check these. How did you do? See you next time.